Hello, we hope you're doing well. Welcome back to our League of Legends episode. I hope you guys all enjoy. Of course, going to be our Week 5 LCS breakdown. LEC video will follow after this one. I hope you guys all enjoy as we break down all the awards out there, and we have officially surpassed the halfway point of LCS. And actually, ironically enough, we've actually fallen into what a lot of us presume to be our top 3 lineups, right? Liquid, of course, at top, followed by Cloud9, TSM, and FlyQuest hanging on by a whim out there. But our top 3 are pretty much, I dare say, here on out, probably going to be more and more solidified, as everyone besides those top 3 teams, and of course FlyQuest a game behind TSM, everyone besides those 4 teams, just one game separates the remaining teams out there. So pretty crazy. Those last 2 spots, in my own opinion, are going to be fought for tooth and nail, and a lot of teams out there struggling to do so, and FlyQuest retains their 4th place spot even after a very poor showing this weekend, 0-2 unfortunately enough, but still lots to break down. I hope you guys all enjoy. Let's hop into our first award of this LCS breakdown, that of course being our best teams, and our best teams have to be so far Cloud9 and TSM. And I say this with no doubt because yes, Liquid is certainly approving of that, but these guys actually both go 2-0 this past weekend, and they do so by beating the same 2 teams in somewhat similar fashions. I mean, they both dominated CLG. I was actually high hopes on CLG last weekend as well as the weekend before that. You know, slowly on the rise, a team, if you take them late, you're probably going to be losing that matchup against CLG, but this weekend was arguably one of the worst weekends I have seen, if not the single worst weekend for a team out there in CLG who got absolutely uprooted by both TSM and Cloud9. Cloud9, first of all, dominates early, dominates the entire thing. You look at the TSM matchup, this is actually the most dominant game I've seen all split long. It's actually TSM building up an 11k gold lead by the 24-minute mark. They take all 15 turret plates. I have not fact-checked this at all, but I'm fairly certain that's the first time any team has done that all split as well, ever since turret plates have been added in this split. They take all 15, CLG takes 0, and the game was astonishingly one-sided. It was almost sad to watch these games. Also against FlyQuest, Cloud9 kind of had a different comeback against them. Against CLG, they dominate early. Against FlyQuest, they lose out early. It's actually FlyQuest bullying Zeyzal, and ironically enough, it's Zeyzal to come back on that Alistar. We've seen him formerly, and his engages, his knockups certainly turned that game around, and Cloud9 win that, and TSM actually kind of dominate both their lineups here, as well as against FlyQuest like they did against CLG. I wouldn't say totally dominant. The game went a little later as well and was certainly a bit closer, but both these teams come away with 2-0 weekends, and both these teams look highly confident going forward, and that's why they are our teams of the week. But moving off that, of course, our MVP players, and I have quite a few for all of you guys. The first of which has to be Smoothie on his Thresh. Against CLG, they definitely snowballed this. I believe it was a perfect like 3-0 start for TSM. He was involved in at least 2 of those, just doing Smoothie things. It's great to see this guy back, and he's been in some pretty good form, but especially this past weekend, I liked what I saw on his Thresh pick, and I think either way, just based off mentality, that game was going to be over for TSM, especially how the results finally ended up, but definitely a great start from Smoothie, and it's great to see him back on that Thresh doing just some typical Thresh things. Also on top of that, I think Zeyzal on his Alistar, like I said before, we've seen him actually change games around for Cloud9 in the past. He continues to do so, but more impressively, his teammate Niski on Sylas. Actually comparing to EU, we've seen Sylas do, I still believe, pretty poor over in EU. They're kind of trying to work it out still. In NA though, pretty the opposite. Actually, Sylas does pretty well. Niski is nailing this character down, especially one matchup this weekend, just doing a great job of actually utilizing those ultimate abilities. I think Niski did a great job securing those leads for Cloud9, and Zeyzal did a great job in supporting him in doing so. Also bouncing off that though, I think kind of a surprise pick would be Arrow on this Optic roster. Now Optic was on a team of the week because yes, they come over with 2 wins, but it's 2 wins against weaker teams out there, that in Clutch and also 100 Thieves, so that's why I didn't give them team of the week, although they could deserve it, right? They actually really did impress me. I want to say though, Arrow is definitely a staple of this roster who continues to make changes. It's actually Dardoch now back in for Meteos, if you guys did not know that, in match 2, and according to Zabotine, apparently because of a more diverse champ pool, that's why they chose him. Now ironically enough, it was actually Dardoch who gave up that first blood. Either way though, a very impressive weekend out of Optic, the best you could actually ask out of them, although it's ironically enough 100 Thieves who have built up a very strong lead before 20 or even 15 minutes, and they blew that. This kind of typical 100 Thieves fashion at this point, and against Clutch Gaming, a bit of a different matchup back and forth until very late game. I want to say Optic not team of the week, although yes, still 2-0. I think both these teams, 100 Thieves and Clutch, had their plenty of doors back into these games. Unfortunately, they could not finish it out, but that's good news for Optic. They come away with their first ever 2-0 weekend this split, and definitely good news for them as they're hopefully on an uphill towards that top 6 placement. Now, very lastly as well, I do want to say Piglet for Clutch is trying his best for this roster, right? We've talked a lot about this Clutch roster alongside Demonte as that staple for this team. This past weekend was certainly Piglet in my eyes. Yes, they split the weekend 1-1, but against Golden Guardians, his bullying of Ole early on, Ole died 4 times in 10 minutes. Piglet a large part of that, his aggressive play style alongside Vulcan, and they definitely snowballed that against them to come away with a 1-1 weekend. Piglet this past weekend looked very solid. And into our plays of the week, actually why Golden Guardians got a win this week has to be Froggen on Victor. He played it, I believe, twice this week. You know, one performance, you know, a deathless performance, but still 9-1 against Echo Fox. This guy was one-shotting, two-shotting people even early on. So here's the first play of the week, guys. Froggen on Victor definitely snowballed this victory for Golden Guardians.
Marksman players about getting one comboed, because Victor certainly with the QE ult, if you're getting that auto off with the Lichbane proc, can easily one round a marksman.
Oh my
no
gosh!
MR, and look at
Look
that.
at Rush's health bar! He's got no magic resist, no health either.
That's what I'm talking about. You cannot.
In a play of the week, we probably will never see a play like this again. It's actually someday, sub 15 minutes, that early game, he's able to dive into the base of Optic. Of course, right? Only against Optic would a team be able to pull this off. And yes, Optic does come actually back to win this game, shockingly enough, after having this done to them.
This is going to be a tough one on Saturday. Good spell shield. Oh, he goes right into the base. He says, this is my house. Thank you very much. Does he have a way out, though? Front door, back door, side door. Looks like he's going into the garage. I have no idea, but he does get himself out. Squeaks through the window. And someday, oh, he's making it right now day. It does not look like it's going to be good on this. He may get out. Halfwing's going to be there to shield him. Unbreakable's coming in as well. Fang's going to be there to help him. And ring around the rosy. Someday gets out safely.
And for underwhelming teams out there, going to keep it sweet and short. There's not too much I want to talk about because it seems for underwhelming teams and players out there, there've been a lot of repeats. This week, a bit of a surprise though. I think Optic is still one of those teams I'm a bit worried about, especially when it goes to late game. We saw Sven come out with an interview himself and say teams only take games late when they're not good at playing, when they don't know how to actually finish a game out. I think Optic is definitely a reference of a potential team he's talking about. They take both their game, or a lot of their games late, even after a pretty strong start to most of their games, right? Not against 100 Thieves this weekend, but we know this Optic roster, no matter what roster they fielded so far, early game has tended to be pretty good for these guys. Mid to late game has still been very much a struggle, especially for many teams out there. Like I'm going to talk about, our other underwhelming team has to be Clutch Gaming. When it comes to Baron execution, it's where we see both these teams really gift games to their opponents and swing it in the direction of their opponents as well, where they lack that communication, overall synergy. So I think Clutch and 100 Thieves, Optic Gaming really worry me in that fashion when it comes to mid to late game. More so Optic, when especially they have these strong early game starts and they cannot finish that. Ironically enough, the other team I want to talk about, 100 Thieves, has a very similar issue, right? Another team who can actually start out games very strong and they cannot capitalize on those early game leads, and they do so exactly that against Optic, and it's what leads to Optic's 2-0 weekend, one of those victories against 100 Thieves. I believe 100 Thieves had a 5k gold lead by around that 20-minute mark, and they blew that entire lead. You have one crown, amazing crown play around Baron, and again, like I said before, those Baron plays tend to swing in the opposite direction, and 100 Thieves could not get that game back in their momentum. Those are two underwhelming teams I'm still very worried about, and dare I say, 100 Thieves at this point, they're kind of in what Fnatic was in last week. If they split any more weekends, they are running the crucial error of missing playoffs. Again, they need at least one, maybe even two 2-0 weekends here on out to even stand a chance. Luckily for them, these North American standings are so close right now. We have 5 or 6 teams within one game of each other, but they still need a breakout weekend. They need a weekend to get the momentum back in their hands. But also, very lastly, speaking about underwhelming players out there, there's only going to be one, and I've mentioned him too many times before. It's got to be Ole. One of the worst performances I've seen on Orange so far. Unfortunately enough, I talked about this earlier, guys. Just bullied by Piglet himself again and again and again. And I want to try and make an excuse for the guy, but it did seem that game was just over within 10 minutes. I have not seen too many champs out there die 4 times within 10 minutes. from repetitive aggression, although I will gift him one thing, okay? Definitely on his Yasuo pick. So you had Vulcan and Piglet playing aggressive to avoid the knockup, but you'd think if you were going to pick into a Yasuo, you would probably know that. Either way, though, that game looked to get out of hand so fast, and that's why Ole, yet again, has been an underwhelming player for me on this roster. If he can get it going, though, right, we know what he's capable of. We have just not seen that quite yet. I know there's plenty of players out there who could be underwhelming, but that was one of the worst performances I've seen in quite some time. But as always, I hope you guys all enjoyed the LCS Week 5 breakdown. Feel free to leave a comment down below what players or what teams you think deserve awards. I'll be back here very shortly with an LEC Week 6 breakdown. But until next time, I'll see you guys then.